Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do a comparison between the Woodmizer Mp360 and 260 Moulders, and we're going to do a side-by-side comparison. So I'll give a full disclaimer here. This is going to be kind of a niche video. I'm hoping it'll help somebody out there that might be in the market for one of these machines or inform somebody, but we're going to get a little bit technical, and I even took notes for this one so I don't miss any bullet points. And you know me, I usually fly by the cuff, so it'll be a little bit more technical, but I'm hoping to add some value. You know, if you're interested in one of these machines, I'm really hoping this helps you out. So, and if you are interested in one of these, you definitely want to subscribe to this channel, because I have a lot of content like this and a lot of interesting things I think would really help you out. So consider subscribing. But anyway, if you guys have been following along with me, you know I just bought this brand new Woodmizer Mp360 molder. And for about 15 years before that, I was running this Mp260 PH260. And what you may not know is Woodmizer bought Moulders, which was the factory in Sweden that made these molders originally, and Logasol was branding them for a while under their brand as the PH260. But Woodmizer owns the whole parent company now, Moulders, and they took over production. And they still make this exact molder. They call it the Woodmizer Mp260. Now, this is the older version. They're virtually identical. I just recently looked at a Woodmizer Mp260. Everything we're going to talk about today is the same. They may have made some cosmetic changes to the hood and a few other things. They've, in my opinion, improvements, little things along the way. Their feed system is better than this original Logasol system. It's just little tiny tweaks they've done to it. So I will give them credit for that. Woodmizer has done a nice job with this line of products. But for the most part, these parts are 90% interchangeable. And I know that because for the last few years, I've been getting parts from Woodmizer. So this is kind of a Frankenstein machine. At this point, it has Logasol original parts, and then it has been updated with Woodmizer parts, and they just bolt right on essentially. Maybe a little bit of modification here or there depending on what we're talking about. So this will essentially be the same as a side-by-side comparison if this was a Woodmizer machine. So like I said, there may be some little small tweaks, but nothing that's going to affect what we're talking about today. The first thing we're going to talk about is kind of some of the specs here, and I'm not going to read a spec sheet for you. You can look online for all the specs, but I'm going to hit the highlights, the main differences between these machines. The 360 obviously is bigger. That runs a 20-inch cutter head on the top head and 16-inch on the bottom, whereas your Logasol is going to run 16 on the top and 12 on the bottom. And as we start talking specs, just double check me on everything. I'm going off top of my head here, but these are pretty accurate. And honestly, these machines are, everything is metric on them originally, so we kind of do a conversion here in the US. If you're listening overseas, you know, all the specs are metric, so they're not exact carryovers, you know, when we're converting millimeters to inches, but close enough for what we're talking about. So it planes wider. These spindles are definitely higher, so you have more vertical ability there. And I'll show you on the Logasol here. Definitely a smaller footprint, a little bit shorter spindle. For me personally, that's never been an issue. I've never done anything thick, but for your application, that may be important. And the configuration is exactly the same. So from your infeed, you have bottom, side, side, top. Same way over here with the 360, bottom, side, side, top. That's standard for a four-sided molder. You know, your fixed spindles first, your movable spindles second. And feed rolls are the same configuration. This 360 has a little bit bigger feed roll. Hopefully that'll give me a little bit more bite. And The one thing I will say off the top, you know, the first thing I noticed here with this 360, one thing where the 260 has an advantage, my fence adjustments are on the far side here, which means I'm reaching across to make those adjustments every time. And my movable spindle is here on the side where the hood opens up, the side I can get into. Where when you look at this 260, when you open the hood, all your adjustments are right in front of you here, which is really nice for making accurate adjustments, and then your movable spindles on the far side. So that's one thing I will give the edge to the 260 on, as far as being able to get in and access this stuff that you're always changing, these fences. That's a little bit of an advantage. Now, for me personally, the added width on the 360 might prove to be nice, but it wasn't the sole reason. It wasn't a major reason why I upgraded to a 360. What we're going to talk about next is probably one of the biggest reasons I was excited to get an Mp360. So on this Mp360, you control the cut of your bottom, the depth of cut of your bottom cutter head by opening this and using this lever, and it's just like a joiner table. It raises and lowers, and that how much you set this table controls how much of a cut you take, which is really, really nice to be able to change that on the fly. On a 260, if you can see here, you've got 4 screws. This one's actually under this movable cutter right now, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to unscrew those, and you have various plates it comes with, and you adjust by putting in or taking away plates to change the height of that cutter. Very inconvenient. I never understood why they did this. This bolt hole is right here at this feed roller. It's very difficult to get a screwdriver in on unless you have this table cranked down, which means when you're set up to run something thinner like 3/4 inch stock, it is extremely difficult to change this takeaway on your bottom head. In other words, how much your bottom head takes off. So I always found that very inconvenient, a nuisance. So I was thrilled to be able to change it on the fly with the 360. So then the other major difference while we're talking about this area of the machine here where it infeeds, the infeed fence here on this 260 is adjusted the same way as the second fence. So you loosen the bolts, and then this goes in and out, and it can slide in and out, so you can adjust to tailor to your cutter head here, which is fine. Never really had a problem with that. That works well. But on the 360, it's kind of the same way as the up and down. You adjust it with a lever, so it stays nice and parallel there to your side cutter. And that it has some adjustment there, so you can manually tweak it, but it gives you on the fly adjustment to take off how much that side cutter is taking off. So that's another nice feature. The other major difference, or I should say another major difference, on this 360, when you crank up and down, the planer head moves. Just the planer head. The bed stays at a constant height the whole time, and just this head moves up and down. This whole carriage, I should say the head and the feed rollers, the upper part of this carriage move up and down, and the head stays fixed. That's nice if you have an outfeed table or something. It stays at a constant height. It's not moving up and down. I do notice right off the bat it's easier to change height on this than on the 260, because on the 260 it's the opposite. You can see here, because I have this cranked down some, the feed rollers and the top head are fixed, and the whole table, everything else, this whole big cast iron table moves up and down. So that becomes a little bit more tedious to crank. There's just more resistance there. And the thing is, I don't have my extension tables on because I'm in the process of taking this apart. But this has 4-foot extension tables on each side, and they move up and down with it. So your outfeed height is constantly changing depending on the thickness of the material you're running. So you can actually see here I have a custom up and down handle, because eventually the Logosol version snapped on me, because it just wasn't up to it wasn't built heavy enough to handle the task of cranking up and down. So I'm not going to say one is better than the other at this point, other than, you know, that 360 seems a little bit easier to use. I don't know if one design is superior to the other. So just something worth mentioning. It is definitely a difference. Horsepower, obviously this has more horsepower. The motor horses on this are, the top head is 7.5 horse versus the 260 is 5. The bottom head on this 360 is 5 versus the 260's 4. And then the side cutters are the same on both machines. The side cutters are 4 horsepower. And once again, you can convert that to kilowatts if that's, you know, what you speak. So, and the feed motors are the same. It's pretty much the exact same feed system on both. Worm drive with a variable speed. You can adjust the speed up and down on both. So this definitely does have more power. That was another thing I'm really excited for, because the 260 worked for me. I never really had a big issue, but you definitely knew when you were doing some heavy molding cuts that a little bit extra power would have really helped out. So I'm happy to have, particularly on that top head, to have an extra 2.5 horse. That's going to be really handy. The 360 doesn't use a scale like most planers do. It uses this dial system, which I have yet to really dive into and set up, but we'll see how accurate that is. You can see as you turn here, it turns the dial. It has that on the top head and your side cutter head. A 260 has nothing on the side head. It has this scale here, which I never found to be usable for much of anything. And it has a traditional planer scale, which I always liked. I always thought was really nice for your top head. And I added this custom door hinge stop here so I could hit 3/4, because a lot of my product is 3/4. And you can laugh at this, but I'll tell you what, this has worked really well for a lot of years. I know as soon as this touches this that I have a slight friction fit, I'm at a perfect 3/4 and I can repeat every time. So that's going to get sold along with the machine as an aftermarket feature there. So another thing while I'm over here, this is a little dusty right now because we just cleaned it. We're moving around stuff here, but these are, both machines control the motors individually. All 5 motors, your 4 cutters and your feed motor, are controlled individually. On the 260, they all start individually and stop together. Now, I can't say for a fact that the new Woodmizers are still this way, but on the 360, you can start and stop each motor individually. I don't know if that's a huge deal to anybody. It doesn't really make a big difference to me, but I guess it's a nice feature to have the ability to do that. The dust extraction is very similar. The Mp360 has 3 4-inch ports and a 5-inch port with the ability to add an extra 4-inch port for the top head. The 260 has 4 4-inch ports. So not a huge difference there, except with the 360 you do need to figure in for that 5-inch port for the top head. Another thing is the knives. All the knives carry over from a 260 to a 360 except for the top head. Now I'll show you here. This is a knife from a 260. This is just a 12-inch knife I happen to have handy. And you can see they have these little scallops that the index screw actually sits in and raises and lowers. The 360 uses more of a traditional planer knife with no scallop in it. And if you can see here on the head, that index screw just sits below the knife. That's pretty typical for planers. And I should say the bottom head is actually the same as the top head on the 360. So I'm not quite sure why they did it that way, that they changed the knives, that these don't have the scallops and everything else still does. But just know that all your side knives transfer over. They are interchangeable. Your bottom knives are interchangeable, and your top knife works a little differently. And obviously, you know, length aside, you know, that 360 takes longer knives than the 260, but it's the same basic principle. So all your molding stuff will carry over. The 360 does use a little bit different gib on the top head for molding, but otherwise all the knives will still work. So if you're going from one to the other, you know, it's not a huge deal. You'll have to buy top knives, but that's about it. So I think I hit all my bullet points here, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments, or you know, if you need any clarification on anything. I know I kind of went over this stuff pretty quick. I wasn't trying to make a long drawn out video here, but I just thought, you know, I know when I was shopping around for this 360, there wasn't a ton of good material, so I figured I'd step in and hopefully fill a gap for somebody. Like I said, I have quite a bit of experience with this type of machine, and I can't wait to get my hands on this. And I'm actually gonna start running this here in the next couple days, but before I got it all dirty, I figured I'd shoot this, you know, and take a video. So they're both good machines. They both do a really nice job. It really, I guess, would come down to how much you want to use it. If you're a casual user, if you're using it for a business, you know, what's your time worth? Except for the added capability, the width of the 360, this machine will just about do everything that the 360 will do. It's just, you know, your setup time may be a little longer. It may be a little bit more cumbersome. You know, some of those features I showed you in the front here for the quick setup are really going to be nice. But, you know, there is quite a price tag difference between the two. So, as a side note, I don't know when I will get this listed for sale. It's September of 2023 right now. This is going to be sold. So, if you're watching this somewhere near September of 2023, it may still be available if you're interested in one of these machines. It's just a side note. So I hope you guys like this video. Hopefully, you know, for maybe 5 of you out there on the internet, it answers some questions or is worthwhile. Hopefully I didn't bore my regular subscribers, and I'll catch you guys next time. See you later.